Hi everyone, I'm Sil and this is Slow Easy English. In today's video, we're going to learn how to use the word unless correctly. Now before we begin, I want you to get comfortable because this is going to be a bit long. And the reason it's a bit longer than usual is because the word unless is a bit tricky and can be a little confusing for English learners. So I want to be sure to give many examples and to explain things in detail so that you understand everything correctly. Also, I'm going to do some listen and repeat exercises as well as give you a little bit of homework to do. Okay, so if you are comfortable, let's begin. So, the word unless, its main function is basically to indicate an exception to something else that you have said. So, whatever follows the word unless is the exception to whatever else you said. You can think of the word unless to mean except if, or but not if, or if something doesn't happen. Let's look at an example and I'm sure it will become more clear to you. So someone might say, I'm going to go golfing tomorrow unless it rains. So this means that the person will go golfing, but there is an exception. If it rains, then he or she will not go golfing. So I will go golfing tomorrow unless it rains. You can also say the same thing by saying, I will go golfing tomorrow, but not if it rains. Another example, your English will not improve unless you use it frequently. So here I'm saying your English will not improve. Exception! Unless you use it frequently. You can also reword this as your English won't improve if you don't use it frequently. Another example, you can't build muscle unless you work out. So again, the word unless, you can think of this as saying, this is the exception. You can't build muscle, but there's an exception, unless you work out. So it's like saying, you can't build muscle if you don't work out. Now, before I continue, I want to point out that in the example, I will go golfing tomorrow unless it rains, I can take that sentence and I can flip it around. I can say, unless it rains, I will go golfing tomorrow. The meaning is the same, but if you put unless at the beginning, then you're simply emphasizing the exception. That's all. Now, you may have heard that there's a rule that says you can't follow the word unless with something negative. But that's not really true. It is true that it is not as common, but there's no rule that says you can't. And in fact, native speakers use this construction all the time. So it's not something you have to avoid completely. So if we look again at my first example, I will go golfing tomorrow unless it rains. So unless is followed by it rains. That's not negative, that's affirmative, right? Now, what if is it possible to say unless it doesn't rain? Yeah, why not? I could say tomorrow I'm going to stay home unless it doesn't rain. Then I will go golfing. This is a pretty natural sounding sentence, and I don't think there's really a rule against it. It's not that there's a rule that you can't do it, it's just that it's not as common. And the reason it's not as common is because it can get confusing pretty quickly by using double negatives or even triple negatives. So yes, as much as possible, follow unless with something affirmative, not negative. But it's not a rule and it's not 100%. Here's a couple more examples using unless followed by a negative. Let's go out for dinner tonight. Unless you don't want to. That sounds perfectly natural. Or I could say, raw beef is safe to eat, unless it isn't prepared properly. Also, perfectly normal sounding. Now, what about in questions? Can we use the word unless in a question? I've also heard a rule that says you should never do this either. Now, I admit it is true that it is quite rare to use the word unless in a question. Normally, there's a better way of asking that question, but it's not completely unheard of. I can easily imagine someone asking, "Can you pass the test unless you study?" That question is not technically wrong, but it is true that there's probably a better way of asking it and a more natural way, which might be something like, "Can you pass the test without studying?" So in this case, without would be better than unless. Okay, so we have covered quite a few examples, some affirmative, some negative, some questions. And as a reminder, affirmative is always a safe way to use unless. In negatives, if I were you, I would stay away from it as much as possible, but it's not 100%. And in questions, it's pretty rare, so do avoid questions. It's probably best that way. Okay, let's do a few listen and repeat exercises to get your mouth used to moving and pronouncing, and let's practice that fluency. Repeat after me. I'm not happy unless you are too. I'm not happy unless you are too. Unless I'm mistaken, she said she would be here at 5 o'clock. Unless I'm mistaken, she said she would be here at 5 o'clock. I won't pay you unless you do a good job. I won't pay you unless you do a good job. Okay, so now that you have a pretty good understanding of how to use the word unless, it's homework time. Don't worry, it's very easy. I want you to write your answers in the comments section, and all you need to do is fill in the blanks for these sentences. Try to think of something, anything, that seems appropriate and natural. So try to finish these sentences. Don't miss work unless I will love you forever unless unless try to get a bit of exercise every day. Okay, simple enough, right? Just do your best to try to think of something that sounds natural to finish and complete these sentences. Put your answers in the comments section and I will look at them and correct them for you. Hey everyone, thanks for watching until the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please help me grow my channel by sharing it with your friends on Facebook or other social media. Thanks. Bye.